support those impacted. We have students coming back now to campus, and the distance learning, COVID-19 and the pandemic has affected our students and ourselves in different ways. So we're just gonna spend some time talking about that and having some discussion on that. So we can go to the next slide. Hello, so I'm Vivian Rodriguez-East, and I'm a program lead at WACSEP.
Hello, I'm Maria Huerta. I'm the WACSEP Mental Health Liaison. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm still getting my bearings from all the technical problems I was having a few minutes ago. So thank you again for coming. Maria Huerta, Mental Health Liaison from WACSEP.
All right, and then the next slide, we're going to get into just some Zoom etiquette. So go ahead and mute your microphones so we can make sure we can hear everything on the training. And then, but you can have your cameras on so we can see your lovely faces. And there'll be opportunities for discussion and questions during this training. And then, like I mentioned before, the training is being recorded and it'll be uploaded at a different time and shared.
Oh, sorry. So who's WACSEP? Just very briefly, if you are not familiar with WACSEP, that is your special education local planning agency. And we work in conjunction with your school district, all of the school districts actually, to provide a continuum of services and placements, staff and parent education, interagency collaboration, and administrative support that will ensure a high quality, individualized, free, and appropriate education for individuals with disabilities. And this is our URL address. One of the greatest lessons I've learned in my works is the importance of simply taking the time before doing anything else to pay attention and listen. And that's a great quote by Dr. Bruce Perry, because what it's telling us is before we do anything with anyone, including moving forward ourselves, it's really important that we take the time to see where we are before we can help others, and then pause and attend and listen to what's happening with others before we intervene. So we're going to watch a video. Take off.
Welcome. This is Tanya.
Hi, and this is Ms. Al.
And we're your student well-being liaisons. By now you have heard that trauma significantly impacts a student's ability to learn. This video is intended to get down to the nuts and bolts of what trauma does, what it looks like in a school setting, virtual or in person, and how you can respond in a trauma-sensitive way. The severity impact that trauma can cause is based on an individual's perceived feelings of being unsafe and not being able to self-regulate. In light of this global pandemic, it matters even more. COVID-19 has raised concerns related to danger, safety, and the need for protection. It has compounded the amount of traumatic events at one time. Students are dealing with grief and loss, isolation, financial hardship, which can lead to a lack of basic needs, household stress, and abuse. COVID-19 has created a reality of uncertainty. The hardest thing for most people is uncertainty, and the greatest challenge during uncertainty is our sense of security.
School staff may also be experiencing some of the same effects or trauma from COVID-19. It's important to take care of yourself first before you are able to take care of others. You are your best teaching tool, and deferring your own maintenance can make your tool less effective. Practice self-compassion. Speak to yourself as you would a good friend. Be kind, patient, and give yourself grace. Focus on what is good, going right, or your wins for the day. This may require a shift in mindset or lens of how you view yourself and others. Take time to check in with yourself. Consider how you are feeling, what is going on, what you might be struggling with, what is in your control and what is not in your control. It's important to put on your oxygen mask first before you help others, as you can't help others if your wellness is dead. Drink water, eat when you're hungry, don't wait until you're hangry. Take care of your basic needs, use self-care to combat stress. Utilize social supports. Be sure that they are positive and meaningful to your life. Consider having virtual coffee breaks or lunch breaks with others. Make sure that you are taking your breaks and not working through them. Also consider disconnecting from social media, maybe placing your phone not away from your reach and not viewing it for some time. These tips are so vital, we had to use another slide. Say no more often. Recognize when your plate is too full. Start your morning the way you like it. Utilize morning routines so that you don't feel rushed, perhaps incorporating some self-care before you work. Declutter your space. Many of you might be working from home, so be sure your space supports your work and doesn't add to your stress. Find a bestie at work and connect and vent to that person when you need to. It's important to also decompress after work. It can be hard to balance our work and life routine, but it is important to disconnect from work and take care of your needs at the end of the day. And lastly, set boundaries. This can be a challenge, as many of us are helpers and givers, but this is an important one.
Here is a short video to help you understand how trauma impacts our students' brain.
Hey, welcome back. Today, I really wanted to think about what's the best way to teach teachers about trauma without getting them distracted with all the technical stuff, and what's the most important thing for them to understand and learn. And I thought that the best way to do it might be to just make a difference between a learning brain versus a brain in survival mode. So we'll just call it learning brain versus survival brain. And this is the difference. So learning brain is this brain that's open to learning new information, and it's completely okay with ambiguity and grays and vagueness, and it sees the big picture. It like pulls back and is on the balcony, can look over the forest and figure out what's going on. On an emotional level, people in learning brain feel calm, peaceful, maybe a little excited about what they're about to learn, maybe a little playful and having fun too, and definitely curious. And they're not afraid of making mistakes because it's just part of the learning process. And so they're not really thinking about themselves. And they actually feel a little bit of confidence that if they just apply themselves, they might pick up what they're trying to learn. Now, survival brain, on the other hand, is completely different. It's hyper-focused on threat. It doesn't like ambiguity. It wants clear, hard facts. It thinks in black and white terms. It doesn't want anything to be gray at all. And then emotionally, you can imagine that survival brain makes people feel panicky, feel like a little obsessive and afraid of getting things wrong. And they don't feel calm and open to learning new things. They just want to get things over with. And people in survival brain also really don't like making mistakes. And they are afraid of looking stupid too. So students in survival brain don't want to be picked on. They don't want to raise their hand and ask questions and look stupid. And so these people are also filled with doubt about their own ability to learn stuff. They're afraid that other people can see how stupid they really are. Now, it's really important to understand how learning brain and survival brain interact, because survival brain always trumps learning brain. And it makes sense because survival brain is just trying to save your life. And so if it thinks that there's something dangerous happening, you better pay attention to it, right? But the tricky thing is that as survival brain stays on longer and longer, it's harder to get out of that. It's harder to really go into learning brain. And the way I think about it is kind of like the myth of Sisyphus. You know, that guy who has to push a rock up a hill, and then every day it falls back down and he has to do it over and over again. Well, being in learning brain is like being up on the high parts of that mountain. You can see the expanse of what's going on, but it also takes a lot of work to be up there. And at any second, if you're not paying attention and putting effort into it, it's so easy to slip back into survival brain again. And that rock that Sisyphus is trying to push up, well, that's kind of like stress. And the more stressed you feel, the heavier and bigger that rock gets, and it just pushes you back into survival brain quicker. Now, the kicker is that for traumatized people, stress is a really rigid and intense thing. And so with trauma, any little stress makes that rock grow way bigger than it normally would. And because people with trauma misperceive ambiguous situations as threatening and stressful, that rock just stays big all the time. Now, the good news is that the more you control stress, well, the easier it is to be in learning brain, right? Because that rock is a lot smaller. And what I really want to highlight for teachers is that the best way to keep students in learning brain goes back to why I spent so much time talking about attachment. Students best learn when they feel like they're safe and supported by the adults around them. So it's kind of like a baby elephant. You know how like on those nature shows, the baby elephant is like playing with leaves or exploring a tree or something like that and having a lot of fun. And the only reason why they can do that is because there's a whole group of mama elephants around that baby protecting it and looking out for danger. So a kid with trauma or who's stuck in survival brain is kind of like that baby elephant who doesn't have protective adults around them. They can't play and learn because they're way too focused looking out for threat and danger. So this is why I really believe that the most important thing that schools need to focus on, way more important than any kind of techniques or curricula, is really whether or not they are creating that environment where students feel like they're surrounded by these big mama elephants who are going to protect them and watch out for them and make them safe. And when students have that, I bet you it unlocks their curiosity, their eagerness to learn, and play as a way to learn. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thanks.
Here's another way of looking at it. Imagine taking a child on a hike with you. They feel safe because you're there, so they walk ahead of you with their brain open to novelty, exploration. The child turns around and for some reason doesn't see you. What happens? They might get scared, start crying, freeze, or run to find you with panic in their brain. If we could see what was happening in the brain, you'd see that their learning brain automatically goes offline and the survival brain takes over. They no longer have the capacity to learn anything as they needed to find safety. Once they see the safety is established, their learning brain goes back online and learning will continue. How can you identify when the survival brain takes control?
Some behaviors and possible survival responses. If you see a student who's on edge, vigilant, can't relax, maybe they shut down, put their head down, or don't appear to be responding, they may be showing a freeze response. A student who's refusing help, distracted, avoiding, or is spaced out in days might be showing a flight or freeze response. If a student raises their voice, argues back, blames, doesn't comply with your request, or appears easily upset, this might be a fight response. Blurting out, interrupting can be a fight or flight response, and walking out, not logging in, or skipping class, refusing to participate, or appearing as if they are giving up can be a flight response. These are some tips for creating a trauma-informed learning environment. Predictability. Set a daily and weekly schedule. Make sure that schedule is visible to students and explain that there is a likelihood that more changes will occur, but that will be communicated to them. Flexibility. Empathize with the difficulties resulting from an already changed routine. We may need to model flexibility as more changes will happen. Provide information in a digestible amount. Remote learning can make assignments feel more overwhelming and daunting. Teens will be more resilient if the adults that believe in them unconditionally and hold them to higher expectations. Teens will live up or down to those expectations we set for them. Resilience is not invulnerability.
Create a routine. Consider time for physical activity in those routines. Include brain breaks. Remember about empowerment. Our students may be dealing with different situations at home. They may feel embarrassed to share that their personal situation is impacting their academics. They may feel vulnerable sharing their home with their classmates. So show appreciation for your students' efforts. Encourage students to ask clarifying questions and encourage them to come to staff if they are struggling or in need of support. Actively focus on inclusion activities that help students feel valued and welcomed. Use inclusive language. Be aware of your own biases and whether you are bringing that into your classroom with how you teach or what you say. Part of being inclusive is remembering that a student's behavior is not about you. The secret to staying calm in the face of a trauma response is to fake it. Be in your head repeating over and over again, stay calm, breathe. Why is this so important? Because being defensive is one step away from being offensive.
Building relationships, showing compassion, and having structure are key elements to becoming trauma-informed. The antidote to trauma is attachment and connection. It's important to create and utilize relational rituals. Some examples. Students and educators can share one tough moment, one helpful moment, or one new lesson they learned about themselves. Or perhaps starting the day with a 5-minute icebreaker focused on relationships. More ideas for making connections and rituals are available to staff. Participating in these rituals can help you build and maintain connection, which is extremely important during these times of virtual learning. It's also important to use a strength-based perspective and to encourage positive self-affirmations. Here are more ideas that can work in your classroom. Promote self-awareness by using a daily check-in. Allow for time and space for students to connect online. Try using some quick mindful activities. Encourage virtual and long distance appreciation and gratitude, showing appreciation for students, supporting their show of appreciation for one another or for other staff. And remember the social emotional learning and modeling, as these resources are accessible to you.
So what do you do if you're worried about a student or a coworker? Simply asking, how can I help, goes a long way. Validate how they feel. Don't try to change those feelings. Instead of trying to find the positive for them, acknowledge that they have a right to feel the way they do. Let them know there are many different systems of support for them, such as their loved ones, guidance counselors or school social workers, teachers, coaches, administrators, student well-being, and a plethora of websites and resources. Here are some resources that can help you be more trauma sensitive. Given this is a video and you can't click on the links, a PDF has been created and saved in the same location you found this video for your reference. Remember, it's easier to build strong children than repair broken adults.
When it feels disheartening to learn that trauma changes the brain, remember that healing changes the brain too. We thank you so much for watching our video and hope this information was helpful to you.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So this video had a lot of different, components and pieces talking about how we can approach.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
How we can approach trauma and how we can support students. So what we're going to do is we're going to now open it up to discussion, and you can share, you can put in the chat box if there's anything that really stood out to you, if you have a comment or a question about the content in the video. So I'll give you a second to really think about what you what you saw, what stood out to you, and then you can put it in the chat box.
What does it mean when creating rituals that they are strength-based?
I can take that. I think when we open up the day for students, doing a check-in to see how they're doing, but you can do like zones of regulation as a check-in where you're just validating how they feel. We're making them feel safe that they're sharing, but we're not doing like, kind of going negative with what they share, just being supportive. And so like they were saying in the video, is the best thing we can do is create safe spaces for the kids. Excuse the gardener, just came by the window where I'm at. Is creating safe spaces. So doing check-ins that are just to get a temperature check where the kids are at, but you're not having any value judgments, right? So the kids over time will feel more and more comfortable, and then that's how you get them to engage more in learning because you've created a safe environment. Good. What other things stood out to you? Comments? Anything that you were like, oh, I hadn't thought about that before?
I really like the analogy of continually rolling a boulder up a hill. It's a good reminder of how students and others are often working really hard just to stay afloat, and that trauma is continually affecting everything they do. Yes, that was a really excellent analogy. And I really appreciated how it showed that the boulder actually fluctuated in size depending on how much stress somebody was dealing with and how it got smaller when they were calmer or feeling more in control of situations. And so that's something that we want to consider, is that even though all of our boulders may seem very heavy going up the hill, the weight of it will vary for us as it will for the students. So providing opportunities like mindful activities, as they talked about, or social emotional learning, are opportunities to help them get that boulder smaller so that they can get through their day and their stress a little bit more effective.
And one of the slides we'll get into later is talking about how to be an ally to the students. It'd be great if the students feel like we're pushing that boulder up with them, so that we're minimizing any stress by not giving them assignments or tasks that are way too difficult. We're really thinking about what can they handle right now and building that connection so that they don't feel like they're carrying that all the way up by themselves. What other comments or things stood out to you from the video?
Okay, maybe more questions will come up as we move forward. Thank you for those of you that had a moment. Oh, excuse me. So the learning brain versus the survival brain. This is really important because research actually shows that the brain physiologically changes when we are constantly in survival brain, if you will. So when we're in learning brain, just to reiterate, there's that feeling of calm, peace, open, being confident, not being afraid to make mistakes. That's when we're feeling stable. When we're stable, then we're able to move forward more fluidly. When we're panicked or hyper-focused on threats or even filled with doubt, it makes us afraid to make mistakes, and it causes us to struggle even in the most basic of things. I'm going to use the beginning of our training as an example. I'm not on survival brain right now, but at the beginning, that small little hiccup of my technology not working, trying all those efforts, it was heightening my stress because I knew that you guys were waiting. And that small little incident, it flustered me to the point where I couldn't even introduce myself. So even that small little sample of that hyper-focused panic moment impacted my ability to do something basic. Now, when we magnify that, it's not just students that are in survival brain. We may go back in survival brain as well. So it's important for us to take a moment to take care of ourselves, attend and listen to ourselves, self-check, get ourselves calm and stable so that we're calm and peaceful. And then we're able to also help others with survival brain and getting back into learning brain.
I think that we will be all kind of experiencing a little bit of survival brain as we get back onto campuses because it is different. And it's, some teachers are like, oh, it's like I'm starting all over again and trying to build back routines because of having the pandemic and the remote learning. Next thing we're going to be talking about is, you heard of the video connection as an antidote to trauma. And that means that there's different ways that we want to be developing connections with students and creating safe spaces. So start with yourself first. Like they said in the video, an empty vessel has nothing to give. So making sure that you are taking care of yourself. And we knew self-care was important before, but I think with the pandemic, it's become even more clear that we need to take care of ourselves to be, able to show up fully for others. And like Maria was saying, we can be in survival brain as well. So kind of pay attention to your own cues so that you're showing up in the best way possible and engage in your own self-care. The environment is also a way to create safe spaces is by creating a predictable and structured environment. If changes need to happen, just letting the students know is a way to just kind of like, hey, and letting them know there might be some changes as we all come back to campus and figure this out so that they are ready for that. And you're just kind of giving them a minute to kind of adjust. And then the other thing we want to think about is our interactions. Like I said in the video, positive and strength-based, calm, and when you might have a student who seems to be getting upset about something that you're like, this isn't a big deal, we're just doing a quiz or whatever we're doing. Think about, how am I presenting myself right now? How am I staying calm? And like they said, just kind of not, just trying to keep yourself regulated as much as possible so you're not contributing to the situation and contributing to the building of that boulder getting larger and the stress that they're coming with.
I want to also highlight, going back to the environment, predictable, structured, we are all going to need reacclimation time. So a routine becomes a routine when we practice it for more than a little while, right? Right now, our routine has been distance learning, and now we're going to get back to reacclimating to the students being back in class, and the students are going to be reacclimating to being back in class as well. Being back with those expectations, being back with a full day of school, being back with the demands that are very different for some than what they have been experiencing at home, but also for ourselves. So we need to give ourselves that opportunity to reestablish those structures as well. And that's really important, that we are kind to ourselves so that we can fill our vessel and have something to give to others.
And just one more thing on the safe spaces, watch for the student interactions because kids have not been around other kids other than family members for a year. So the interactions and problem solving, all of those things are going to need a lot more kind of front loading on how to interact with others appropriately. And so we have to kind of be ready for that and not be just giving them the skills that they need to be able to do those types of activities and in class.
So it is important. Accurately estimating the required level of crisis is very important, as there are dangers associated with both over and under reacting to school associated crisis. So what does this mean? This basically means that we cannot assume that all of the students are going to be impacted in the same way. It's going to be a spectrum, and some of them might just need some time to reacclimate, and then they're going to be okay. Others may be more impacted and have experienced some trauma. So we want to consider also the baseline of the students that we were working with. Who are those that were struggling with some difficulties and some possible traumatic experiences before the pandemic? Where are they now? So it is going to be a spectrum, but not everybody is going to be impacted in the same way. So what can we do to help? Again, we're going to be the first contact for the students at the school. So it's going to be so important for them to see us as a helping alliance. And when they see us, a helping alliance is described as somebody that they would see as safe, somebody that they would see as strong, somebody that they would see as calm, and somebody that they would see as knowing. And I want to go back to what the video and some of the information that we talked about highlighted. The learning brain is calm and peaceful. So if we're in survival brain, it's going to be difficult for us to be calm and to show that calmness to our students. Also, they discuss that students learn best when they feel supported and safe. So in order for us to be supportive and safe, we need to make sure that we are also stable. Going back to that first slide of attending and listening, pausing before doing anything to attend and to listen. If that means that you need to take a breath before we go into the class, then let's take a breath. Incorporate it into the classroom. That might be a good activity. Some of that mindfulness that you might start the day with for all of the students, including yourself. You can do 1 minute of mindfulness activities, and that makes a difference. So that's just a quick example of some activities that you might be able to do. So that concludes our presentation, but we'd like to open it up for any further discussion or questions that anybody may have. No questions or comments?
Question?
Can I just
Yes,
say
Isabel.
something? Oh, sorry, Isabel, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sandra.
I think
Go ahead,
Isabel's
Isabel.
muted. Yeah.
So why don't we start with Sandra then?
Okay.
I just wanted to reiterate like the importance of taking care of ourselves. I think that as educators, we're often thinking about our students and even the staff that we're supporting, right? And how can we effectively support our students, right, that are going through these challenges or challenging behavior. And we don't focus on ourselves, and we don't focus and we don't give us time to take a break, right? To take that mindfulness moment.
Right.
And I think that this year, more so than ever, we've really been trying to stress that to everyone, right? Is really don't feel guilty for needing a break, right? For giving yourself that moment and for acknowledging what you're feeling. So I really appreciate that you're reiterating that, right? The importance of taking care of ourselves and really putting on our oxygen mask first before we're supporting our students.
Absolutely. That's so important.
Yeah. Isabel, you ready?
Yeah, I was actually typing. So I was trying to
Oh,
type
okay.
that out, but thank you for giving me the time to ask. I think I wanted to know how you would suggest for teachers to advocate for that time. So you mentioned that it's important to put that oxygen mask on, but sometimes I think telling someone to put the mask on or giving that person the time to do it are two separate things. So how would you suggest for that advocacy?
I think that, it's there's a lot of things that we're juggling as we come back, because we actually have to put more things in place because of the protocols. I think the best thing an educator can do is work with their colleagues in terms of how you plan your instruction, and try to kind of crowdsource whatever, like if you're planning some curriculum, working together. And that is a way of self-care, because you have some people that you can talk to, but also you're not trying to plan your whole day by yourself. So I think that's one of the most effective ways to try to get that oxygen mask, is by trying to collaborate and coordinate, like if you're grade level, so that it's just, you're not carrying the load by yourself, and I think then, taking time to make sure you take your lunch, that sort of thing, and be mindful of who you hang around with at lunchtime, and that they help fill your cup so that your day is positive, and really kind of thinking about who you're interacting with on those break times.
I would also suggest being transparent with your administration and your teams. Everybody has been experiencing the pandemic. Again, it's a spectrum, so we're all at different levels. But unless we communicate what level we're at, then there's no way for our administrators to recognize if we need a little bit more support in some areas. People cannot see what we don't communicate if it's an internal dynamic. So I would give our administrators the benefit of the doubt as well, and have those discussions. Staff development is a good opportunity. Reach out and see if there's anybody that's offering little spurts of trainings, or if there's videos. I know that our WACSEP is going to be offering different little short snippet videos like this one that you might be able to watch as well if you need more resources that you might benefit from. So really expanding your fillers so that it's not just all laying on one person or one dynamic. Modalities, practicing different modalities and approaches.
Can I add something, Maria? What we've done in El
course.
Rancho. One of the things that we've advised our administrators as we've been meeting with them and doing training on this particular subject is to assign teachers to a buddy. And so prior to their once a week, right, meeting that they have, they meet with their buddy to check in with one another. And really just because a lot of the times we're so into what we're doing, and we don't even realize like that we need to kind of vent, or we just need to talk or connect with someone, especially this year when we've been working from home. And so that we recommended that they assign, right, buddies to their staff, and then they give them 10 minutes to just connect before they start their staff meeting, and then they come as a group. And so that's what we've recommended to kind of help with that piece as well.
And that might look different at different districts because every district has their own map to follow. But regardless of the district and the map, communication is going to be essential, both
Yeah.
from the students to you, you to the students, administration to you, you to administration.
All right.
Any
Any
other
other-
questions
Yeah.
or comments?
Okay.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time for this shot of information. And please keep a lookout for additional resources that we might be putting out there that could be beneficial for you, your students, and their families as well. Don't forget to take care of you.
Yes.
Thank you,
Right.
everyone.
Thanks.